that Darnold was going to fall into their laps at number 3. But now, to me, you give the job to Bridgewater. And you say, do your thing, Teddy. Because either A, somebody offers the Jets a nice draft pick and maybe a first rounder before the end of, or before the regular season begins this year, whenever there's already, Tyrod Taylor's already hurt for the Browns. So now Baker Mayfield is their starter.
Right.
So that's maybe one thing that the Browns don't want to do. Although I'll tell you what, Baker Mayfield in the times that I've seen him has looked pretty decent. But somebody's going to need a quarterback. There are plenty of teams out there whose number one quarterback isn't as good as Teddy Bridgewater. So does that team give the Jets a number one, and maybe the Jets can stockpile some draft picks for a guy that they just spent $5 million on?
Right.
Which would be fantastic for them. Or do you let Teddy Bridgewater play the entire season or as much of the season as he can? Maybe he gets hurt again, who knows? But let him do what he does, put up some great numbers, and then just have a bidding war before the draft.
Yeah, but is he only signed to a 1-year deal?
Yeah, 1 year, $5 million.
Okay, so then if he especially comes off a good year, then he can really make some decent money for himself.
Well, I mean that's the thing. I would hope and expect that the Jets would have some sort of an option,
right?
Because then obviously if he plays the season and he has a great season, then he's a free agent again. So if there's an option for the Jets to renew, but he's tradable, and there's no reason to not do that. And if you have him play half a season or whatever, and then have Darnold ready to go, well, whenever the NFL trade deadline is, deal him before that. But he has shown that he can start in the league, and obviously the Jets are grooming Darnold. That part of it is not going to change. Teddy Bridgewater could throw for 6,000 yards this year. Sam Darnold is still the quarterback of the Jets next season, undoubtedly.
But at that point, how do you know? Let's say Bridgewater,
because that's what he was drafted to be.
Yeah, but let's say you already have a player you find out who's good, and you didn't expect it. What do you do then?
Doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know.
You've already invested that number one pick.
But let's say Darnold isn't the guy. That's the thing. What happens if he's not the guy, and you have Bridgewater who is?
But he is the guy.
Well, I'm just saying.
He is the guy. He has to be the guy. That's like I said, that is what you've drafted him to be. So he has no choice but to be the guy.
Right. Okay.
So that's the Jets' plan. So you can't deviate.
So even if you have something that's good, you get rid of it anyway.
Well, yeah, because you can get other good things for it. You can get a first round pick, or maybe a couple of seconds, or whatever it is. You can recoup some of what you traded to move up to get Darnold. If you could get 2 second rounders for Teddy Bridgewater, like I said, a guy you signed off the scrap heap for $5 million,
right? Thank
you very much. Or if you can even get a first rounder, that's even better. But if Bridgewater keeps playing like he's playing and shows teams that he is healthy, all it's going to take is a couple more injuries in the preseason, and teams are going to be knocking on the Jets' door. And the beauty of all of this is that Cade McCown is still there. Or it's Josh McCown. I'm sorry, I always screw up his name. Josh McCown he's still there. I mean,
he was great. Look
at the Jets' quarterback situation this year as compared to last year. This year, they have a guy who they signed as a free agent for very little money in terms of NFL quarterbacks,
right,
and pay. They have their number one draft pick and who they're grooming to be the guy for at least the next 10 years. And you have last year's starter who, as far as I'm concerned, is now your third-string quarterback. So think about,
he has a history of that. So,
but think about how much massively better the Jets are in terms of their quarterback situation 1 year later. It's unbelievable to me how much better off they are.
It's true, but at the same point, I think McCown or Bridgewater has gone before the end of training camp. That would be a smart trade. So to speak.
Nobody's going to trade for McCown.
Why not?
Because his history. He's old. He's a stopgap guy. If you desperately need,
if you have a stopgap situation, you go for a stopgap guy.
No, if you desperately need somebody to be a quarterback just for one season. And no good team is going to be in that situation because their backup will be the guy who they would go to because he'd be used to the system. McCown, either one of those guys, if they get traded at the end of the preseason before the season starts, they're going to have to learn an entirely new system, and that's going to take time. But okay. McCown, it would be difficult because, like I said, his history is he's not a very good quarterback. He had a great year last year, and it's almost like the Ryan Fitzpatrick situation where the Jets had to have him back after the great year that he had, and he had a great year.
They did. But
they figured, all right, well, if he comes back, he's going to have the same year again, and he was less than mediocre. And you remember before the season, everybody was clamoring, the Jets have to get Fitz back. Well, it turned out, no, they really didn't have to get Fitz back.
And Fitz was a little over the top with his demands. And
he wanted like real NFL starter. He wanted
right.
$17-18 million a year, which was insane. And the Jets held their ground to a certain extent anyway. And they probably paid him more than they should have. But it was a short-term deal. And when he put in the season that he did, the Jets were glad that they stuck to their guns because they were right.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying, and especially like in terms of Cade McCown. He's like 38 years old or something like that. So he's going to be a guy. He's got 1 or 2 more years left at the most.
Yeah, that.
So what team is going to trade for him as anything other than we're completely screwed at quarterback? I mean, you're talking 2 injuries in training camp.
Right.
So it would be like we desperately need a professional quarterback. You know, like the term professional hitter. That he would be a guy who professional quarterback. He could learn the system quickly. You could put him in there, put it down with like a short playbook, and he would be able to operate the offense as he learns it as he goes along. But because like a 24 or 25-year-old kid couldn't do that. But a guy who's been in the league for 15 years now, he could do that because he knows how the league works. But is he any kind of a long-term solution? No.
Well, my question about the Jets right now, the quarterback situation, like you said, is much better than it was last year.
Unbelievable.
But what about the rest of the team? Because, what are we missing or not seeing because everyone's focused on the quarterback thing
Well,
right now?
It's a good question because obviously Darnold was the big prize in the draft, but don't forget the Jets had to give up their second-round pick because the Colts demanded that to move up.
Sure.
So what else did they get from the draft? The Giants got Saquon Barkley. They got the Hernandez kid, the lineman, who was supposed to be fantastic and had the best quote of the offseason as far as I'm concerned when he just said he hates people, which is exactly what I want to hear from an offensive lineman. I hate people. Good. Hit somebody. But the Giants did very well in free agency. The Jets, to be honest, I don't recall the Jets even signing a free agent. So, unless I'm missing somebody, or do you remember somebody?
No,
but
I don't remember anyone.
I don't think the Jets did all that well in free agency. I think having a couple of injuries come back, and the wide receiver, who's the wide receiver that kept getting arrested? The guy who wanted to make the Pro Bowl last year.
I can't remember.
I can't remember. Look for Jets stats from last year.
But
I think the Jets will be better in the sense that they have guys on defense, Leonard Williams and Jamal Allen and guys like that, or Adams. I'm sorry, guys like that who are a year older, a year better. They know the league that much better. I expect a decent jump in the defensive side of the ball for the Jets this season because those guys should start to turn into real game changers. And especially Adams in the backfield, now that he's had a year of NFL experience, I think he is going to be a force in the back. And I think receivers are going to hear this kid coming because he's going to be one of those guys that lowers the boom on people. And I think any especially defensive player and especially somebody who's in the defensive backfield like that, you need a year to figure out how the game works and the speed of the game. But I think Jamal Adams is such a good player to begin with, and to have a year of experience coming into training camp like he does now, I see this kid becoming a real star this year. So we'll see. I'm still not so sold on the offensive side of the ball, but we'll see. I mean, that's all you can say. I mean, the Jets to me are still a work in progress. But if you look at what Darnold has done in the first 2 exhibition games, the yardage isn't there, and that's a little troubling because I would like to see them
total or like throwing deep.
Well, I would like to see them kind of turn him loose a little bit more. He's throwing a lot of checkdowns and underneath stuff, and he's getting completions. But if you're going 8
yards,
10 for 15 for 72 yards,
that's not a lot.
It's safe, and safe is fine, but you need to break tackles and you need to also stretch the field a little bit and go for something deep and let them. Let the receivers go after the ball, but also keep the secondary honest.
Right.
And so, I'd like to see a little bit more of that when Darnold is in the game.
I would like that, too. By the way, brother, just as a reminder, High Fidelity every Thursday at 2 p.m., hosted by Kim Tracy, featuring a mix of music with a focus on newer music and lesser-known artists. That's High Fidelity every Thursday at 2 p.m. right here on WHPC. And Big Ed's not in, by the way, this week.
Oh, no.
Big Ed is down in, well, we won't say where he is. I know where he is. He's also decluttering his
good for Big Ed.
His house, but Big Ed gladly throws away things.
That's for sure.
It's like, I'm getting rid of this stuff. Yeah.
Too much.
So Zach will be coming in with the Good Gold Show in a couple of minutes. So just to let
that'll
you know.
be interesting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to Zach.
A bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, why not? So I think the Jets are going to do better this year, but there's a thing here on NFL.com. It's
What's that?
It has Darnold, Bridgewater, and McCown sitting next to each other, and they also are quoting Darnold seems to like Bridgewater. He says he's a cool cat. It doesn't seem to be a seriously competitive, like they chopping off each other's knees or something concerning the three-play quarterback. So that's always a good thing. But I also think
McCown's a team guy,
right?
So
that'll
go
He's been
well.
on so many teams.
That's why he's still getting paid.
Yeah,
he's happy to be there. He, like I said, he's 38 years old and he's still in the league.
Right.
So imagine what he's making money-wise.
Right.
Millions of dollars.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. Put them in the bank and think about Josh McCown got beat up last year.
A lot.
So if he spends this season holding a clipboard, making the same money, you don't think he's happy about that? I'd be thrilled.
I'd be thrilled too. Anyway, brother, I have an idea.
What's that?
Since we didn't get to all the topics we were going to, that we continue this, and it'll be exclusive podcast-only material.
Ooh.
Which includes soccer, NHL, and the Giants.
Ooh.
So we've never done this before, but
no, we
had so much to talk about, and we didn't get to all of it. You want to do that?
Sure, why not?
Okay, we're going to do that. So
anything for the fans.
People listening right now on the radio, well, this is when the show ends. But if you want to go to our podcast later, we'll actually have more content, as they call it in the business, content.
Yes.
They don't call it news or entertainment. It's content.
Bonus from the press box.
Bonus from the
like
press box.
what they say when we go to extra innings.
Yes. So we're out of here. Zach's coming in next with Good Gold. Zach, you gotta live up to Big Ed's standards.
Oh, don't worry. I'll try my best.
So
I don't know if I could be as good as him, but I'll try my best.
That's all you have to do. Anyway, we'll see you next Monday, 9 o'clock. We'll have some bonus footage. Catch it on the podcast. Take care.
The views expressed on air are not necessarily those of WHPC, its management, or Nassau Community College. Responsible opposing viewpoints will be considered by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu or by mail at WHPC 1 Education Drive, Garden City, New York 11530. Thanks for listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
And we're back here on From the Press Box, part of the WHPC Sports Talk family. And this is the podcast-only section of the show. We had so much to talk about that we did not get to, that we decided to include it on the podcast. And I believe, brother, this is the first time ever that there's been direct podcast material from someone at WHPC.
This is new.
This is new.
We're breaking new ground.
This is something we thought about, and we thought we'd do it. Anyway, we were talking about the NFL. We'd spent a lot of time on the quarterback situation for the Jets. But the Giants, they're looking pretty good, too, in preseason, actually. Davis Webb has been looking good. Obviously, Eli's the quarterback.
Looked much better than he did the first. The first game, he was not good at all.
Right.
And the Giants played the Detroit Lions.